I just heard the story John told me when he walked out about the Trump 2016, so maybe that'll lighten it up a little bit. But I will actually tell a story to kind of get me going a little bit, because I enjoy telling it. Everybody seems to have heard it, it appears, but usually stories will last about a year. And I see some new faces in the crowd. Some of you heard this, but it's fun to tell. So about a year ago, actually, since I've got to quit telling it, the Pope came to Washington, D.C. And it was a great day. It was just a neat thing to have him there. And they had blocked off the highways, the roads around the Capitol building, so we could go around the Capitol in the Pope mobile for a parade. And I was up early that morning out walking, and I see some people trying to cross the street, but they couldn't because of all the fencing. And they obviously had tickets to see the Pope and for his speech, and they were about a block and a half away. And I looked up the distance. I said, they don't know how to get over there. Let me go get them over there. I got a special pass I can get through these kind of places. I'll just be Kentucky nice. Well, I got up to the person. There were three of them. It was Joe Kraft, Kelly Knight, and Coach Cal. So that was nice. It was good for me to be nice, but I got to meet Coach Cal. It's the first time I'd really met him. And he looked over at me after I got him over there. He said, would you like to go to lunch today? And I'm sure I had something to do, but I went. And so who wouldn't take that one? But no matter what color you wear, I wear a Hilltopper red. But it was kind of cool to go to lunch with Coach Cal. So I'm with Hal Rogers, Pierce Lyons, Coach Cal, and myself at the Republican Club. And this lady walks over to me. Her name is Brooke Yoder. She's from Union County, but she's married to a member of Congress from Kansas. And she had these family from West Kentucky there to see the Pope. And she had these two beautiful girls, about 12 and 10, dressed like going to church on Easter Sunday. And the Pope had already left. This is afterwards. So she came over to me and she goes, would Coach Cal take a picture with these two girls? They bleed blue. And I said, well, let me ask him. I don't know. You guys know him better than I do. What do you think? He said, sure, bring them here. And he was just mussing their hair and hamming it up with them just like he does. So when they walked to sit back down, Brooke says, thanks for doing that. You know, this just made their day. I said, made their day? They just saw the Pope. So I guess.
That's pretty good.
Coach Cal, who's it was a pretty interesting story, I thought. Well, thanks for having me here. And it is important that you're here because what's going on in business in our country. And I know we're having 1% economic growth, which doesn't keep up with any way of improving people's lives. But you also hear from business they can't find people to work. So you have this sluggish economy, people not showing up for work, and what are the issues? And I think it's regulatory reform and entitlement reform. And so what I've been doing this year is actually been tasked with Medicaid task force to try to come up with a plan, depending on who the president will be, is how far we can go in reforming Medicaid at the federal level, because it is the largest health care program, and it's bankrupting our country, and it's bankrupting our states. You can make any claim what you want on Governor Bevin. I said General Assembly folks are here. When I was in the General Assembly, we made our first budget in 2000. The general fund budget was $13 billion. In the last dozen years, we've cut schools, we've cut colleges, we've cut about everywhere in federal government and state government. And I was part of that, so I'm not passing a buck to anybody. I left to go to Washington. But this last year, our state budget was over $20 billion. So where's the money? It's all going to Medicaid. Now, if you look at what Governor Bevin's asking Washington to do, now when you go to Washington, you got to remember the people you deal with are single-payer people. They want the Canadian health care style. So they're going to say no to anything. So when you talk about taking people off Medicaid, what Governor Bevin and his staff has done, I spent the day with them the other day, trying to figure out what they're trying to do. And I think 99% of Kentuckians say what they want to do is reasonable. What they're saying, there are two populations of Medicaid: traditional Medicaid, disabled, single mothers, children, what Medicaid was designed for. And that's completely off the table in terms of the reforms and the waivers they're looking for. They're not changing anything, elderly, disabled, single mothers, and children. They're asking for no changes. But you remember, Obamacare expanded Medicaid to 100 to 138% of poverty. There's no requirement. You just have to have an income rule. You could be an able-bodied, working person that can work and qualify for Medicaid. And all they're asking is to treat this population more like an insurance plan. They say, we want to have them pay premiums so they can learn how to do insurance. You know, the premium is going to be $15 a month. Go tell your fellow Kentuckians that that's a burden when they're paying $200 and $300 and $400 a month for health insurance, $15 a month. And they're saying if you're going to get something for free, nothing's free, but they're going to get it for free, you ought to have some kind of community engagement. I think they're asking for up to 20 hours a week. If you can't find a job or have a job, you show up somewhere for job training. You show up somewhere to work. That's what they're asking this executive branch, President Obama's administration, to do, to pay up to $15 a month for premiums, not if you're in the traditional Medicaid, and go to work. And they're saying that's a non-starter. That's not going to happen. We can't do it. You know, they do that in Indiana, and they say, well, that's just a demonstration project. You know what the difference is? Governor Pence wanted to expand Medicaid in a way that was reasonable and would make sense. Well, he could say no, and there was no expansion. Well, the Obama administration wanted states to expand. So Governor Pence got these concessions from the federal government. And they're saying they won't approve them from Kentucky. And I talked to him. I said, you know, I know the Ohio River is wide, but it's not that wide. We're not that different. If it works in Indiana, it should be able to work in Kentucky. But they said, well, that's a demonstration project. We can't replicate that. So those are the kind of things, when you hear what's trying to happen, Governor Bevin, I really believe, in the bottom of my heart, is not there to say, we're going to just rip out. I'm trying to set something up so we can change Medicaid. What he's trying to do is set something up to make Medicaid sustainable, manageable, and work people off of it. Every employer in here is probably looking for workers. Why don't we have a system where it becomes a cliff? So Medicaid becomes your Medicaid, you go to work, make some kind of income, you lose all your health insurance. Why don't we make a system where it's more transition instead of expecting people to be on it for the rest of their life? And that's what Governor Bevin's trying to do. That's just pure and simple. And that's what we're trying to do to help him moving forward. The other thing is on the health care bill, the health care law. You know, Kentucky has been the poster child. And I'll tell you, I know the state legislators here. I was a former state legislator. I know a lot of state employees. And we have to tip our hat. We're one of the few states in the country that actually could put together a website that worked. And I mean, literally, we're one of the few states in the country that had a website that worked. And I do think there's praises to people who were able to pull off a website that worked. But what's in it? We've already closed the co-op. They closed the co-op after insurance companies put out their rates. So those in the co-op are going into the population for insurance, which are going to be priced into it next year. So coming this October, those are going to be priced into the system. We know people are pulling out of the health insurance system, out of the exchanges. And we know we have a Medicaid system that's going to bankrupt our state. So we do have a website that works and can take nothing away from that. But this health care bill is not working. And we are working on part of a team to put together more market-driven health care program, health care law that gives across state lines, allows people to have insurance pools and to come together to make insurance more affordable and more practical, not bankrupt the country and the state. Really? So there are big efforts to move that forward as well. The thing that I hear the most when I go to businesses is just the regulatory environment. Everything they try to do, there's some new law, new rule. We don't even know what they are. You know, from the fiduciary rule, which I'm not sure if, I think Andy Barr might have talked about before, somewhat delving to all the labor rules that are coming down. You have a lot of labor laws that are coming down. The overtime regulation. And should that lower income have been adjusted? Probably. I think we all could have agreed to that. But when they doubled and capture more people in, you know, there's actually a movement to say minor league baseball players should get paid overtime if they work over 40 hours. Minor league baseball players. So if they show up at Slugger Field that way, I think they were on this side that way, then they can only do, if they've been on a bus ride all day and they get to the 7th inning and they haven't finished the game, what are you going to do? Say, we got to stop the game because our players have got their 40 hours in this week? What if you're a young player trying to get to Cincinnati and you say, hey, I need some extra pitching practice today or extra hitting practice? Coach says, nope, you can do it on your own, but you can't come to the stadium because you've already got your time in. Now think about how crazy, I think, some of these moves at regulatory have been. And we just need to stop. Congress has ceded its power in a lot of ways. A lot of bills, the health care bill being one of them. The health care law essentially says you're going to have everybody has to buy health care with essential minimum benefits as determined by the Health and Human Services Secretary. So Congress just ceded that power. The Consumer Financial Protection Bureau doesn't even get appropriated by Congress, it's appropriated by the Fed. So when they passed that law, they even gave all oversight authority. But a lot of it is the president taking authority that we don't think he has the authority to take. And if you remember during a State of the Union speech, the president stood up and said, if Congress doesn't do this, I have my phone and my pen and I'll do it without you. And what was kind of offensive more than that to me as a legislator, I think every legislator should be offended that the executive is going to say, well, Article 1 of the Constitution isn't that important to me. I think every member of the legislative branch should have said, no, Mr. President, we're going to take our responsibility, no matter if you agree with him or not. But if you remember that, if you're watching it on television, over half the Senate at the time, including the Majority Leader Reid, gave him a standing ovation. Nearly half the House of Representatives gave him a standing ovation to say, we're just going to cede our authority to the executive branch, regardless of what the Constitution says. And so we're actually in the middle of a couple of lawsuits, one that's pretty important, that we'll see where the president has the authority to go. And the Supreme Court, we actually thought we were going to get our case in court this summer. Justice Scalia passed away just as Congress was given standing to move forward, so that's kind of been on hold. But Congress is fighting, or we're fighting in Congress, and I would say this, if it is Trump 2016, and he wants to go beyond what I think the presidential authority is, even if I agree with what he's trying to do, it's my job to make sure we do it through the legislative process and through the rulemaking process. Because it's very difficult. One would be the fiduciary rule. It's very difficult for people from Kentucky, whether you're from Louisville or Bowling Green, to go and see the bureaucrats that are writing the rules. But I guarantee you when we're home in August, we're here today, I don't know how many meetings I've had during the month of August. A lot of people on Fox, even Fox News, like to say we're all on vacation. I mean, we're all out having meetings. You have access to your legislators. It's unbelievable how I think most people across the world can't believe how much access people have to their legislators. That's how it should be. And so we can sit down, and it's not the lobbyists. I will tell you, when the fiduciary rule first came out, it was horrific. I think it's still difficult, but it got better, improved. And it wasn't because there were a bunch of lobbyists running around Washington, D.C. giving money to politicians. That's just not true. I mean, there were lobbyists and they donate. I'm not saying that's not true. But the influence was when we came home last August, about every financial planner I know that lives anywhere within the 2nd District was calling to have a meeting with me to explain. And I was already convinced, but I know they were calling to have meetings with people of the opposite party. And I do know that Secretary Perez, who's the labor secretary, met with me. He was great to meet with. He met with members of the other party and tried to rearrange the rule to make it where some of us said they didn't need to do anything. There was a solution chasing a problem. But I think some people would say today, given that they were going to do something, that they listened and were able to change their rules and regulations to make it more palatable to people in the business. And it was done by the grassroots. I guarantee if it had just been the top law firms in D.C. running around Capitol Hill, you would have gotten the rule as it was pretty much written. But it wasn't. It was done by people with grassroots out trying to make a difference. So understand the regular, and I want to hit one more point. I've got just a couple more minutes, and I wasn't going to hit it, but I heard the question, so hopefully it'll come forward on Workforce Investment Act. We just passed last year a new workforce investment law. It is it is one that really devolved the power down to the local level, and with our workforce investment boards. And the idea that the needs in Bowling Green, the needs in Louisville, the needs in Owensboro, the needs in Danville are going to be different. And so each community can say, do we need industrial development people, industrial maintenance people, do we need tool and die makers, or what is the skill that we're lacking as a community to move forward? Because I can tell you, I saw an employment group, a private employment group, that third-party employers that sends people to work at Cecilia Days in Hardin County, set up at a booth like at a fair trying to get applicants because they just got a contract to hire people for a Ford supplier, to supply workers to a Ford supplier for over $14 an hour. And they couldn't find people to come to work. And so they were actually out at a fair or a festival in Cecilia trying to find people. You got to sign up for the raffle just for giving an application to them. And that's where businesses are looking for workers. Our economy's not growing. It's just an odd situation that we're in. And I really believe, I have an economics degree, but I'm not an economist that does the research in this. It is the burdensome red tape that government is putting on businesses to keep people from moving forward. Now, I know my time is up, and I'm sorry I was late to RSVP about coming. I actually expected to be coming home from Williamsport yesterday. My nephew, I get to be Uncle Brett instead of Congressman Guthrie. In Bowling Green, my nephew was on the Bowling Green East team that came. They're the third best team in the country. There's nothing to hang your head on about being the third best team in the country. And my brother says the best team really did win. That New York team was, not only were they good. They were great people and a class act.